Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the June 27th, 2017 meeting of the Falmouth Zoning Board of Appeals. I will kind of do my usual preliminary comments. I'll start by asking everybody to silence their cell phones if you haven't already done so, and I'll introduce the board, I guess from your right to left tonight. Starting with Ed Van Kuren, he is a regular voting member of the board. Next in line is Ken Foreman, he is the vice chairman of the board. I'm Kimberly Beelan, I'm the chairman of the board. Next in line is TJ Hurry, he's a clerk or the clerk of the board. And Paul Murphy is last in line, he's a regular voting member. And Paul Haverty is here as well from, oh my gosh, Bobrowski, Blattman. I'll get it, I should know that, it's pretty bad. Sari Budrow is our zoning administrator, and Jade Guy-Shecker is our recording secretary. So tonight we just have one matter on the agenda. It's an open meeting item, and it is the Liberty Green project. So as you all know, the public hearing's been closed, and we're just engaged in board discussion at this point. So, Paul Haverty.
Yes.
You kept the Pauls next to each other.
I
Oh, that's true. So you sent, or you had to resend a revised version today. I don't know if you just want to go over it, or?
I mean, that's fine, we want to go that way. A lot of the changes were actually made during the meeting last time.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were also things that were discussed last time that needed changes that I added. So if you look at I changed the date. I'm presuming this is ultimately going to be signed by the board in July and not June, but if you think you're going to get it done tonight, we can change that back. I think sorry, when did we say the deadline was for filing?
July 15th, which would be the 14th. You say the 17th, but I err on the side of caution.
Correct. On number 3, I added along Main Street and Lantern Lane, except for that doesn't say Lantern.
Right.
Now it does.
And Sari will be adding in the lots on the first page.
Yeah,
the 6 parcels.
Registry of Deeds requires those in their book and page number on the top of the
Okay.
document.
Sorry, what was the date that the hearing was open? December, I've got a blank here.
In November, December, I don't have it with me. I want to say December 5th because he filed November 9th. Was the 5th a Thursday?
I'm gonna look.
Could be the 10th. I'm sorry.
December 5th is a Thursday. Oh wait, no, I'm looking at January 8th. December 8th.
Okay, December 8th. I'll confirm that tomorrow. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. And so, not to just jump on your toes, but so last we were here, we went through the procedural history, the jurisdictional findings, kind of one by one, and then the factual findings. So those have all been incorporated at this point.
Correct.
Okay.
So in number 9, I added a reference to the regulations, 767
Mhm.
56.00. 10A, just added a 10%.
Can we change the first number 10 to the word 10? Thank you.
Where are you?
10A, we're on page 3, 26.
Excuse me, it was December 8th. I did the first page for you and it was December 8th. Sorry. Do you want the lot information, Paul, or do you want me to do it?
You want to give it to me now?
No, but she was bad.
Mm-mm. No, 10A. Where's this number 10?
Oh,
Yeah, just spell that out.
All right, moving on. Factual findings, number 11, added all the other addresses, 556, 0 Main Street, 0 Lantern Lane, 4 Lantern Lane, 3 Lantern Lane, and 6 Lantern Lane.
Has the applicant, so I guess where in the process do they combine the lots? or
You-
create two lots?
You condition that and you sign off.
Oh, that's right, it's not,
Another
okay,
one.
Right, so as part of their submittal of final plans,
yes,
they would submit, an A&R plan.
and then
for this
because
board
we're
to
the
sign.
local
You sign
permit.
You are the planning board as part of this
Right,
process.
okay, that's right, okay.
All right, number 13, there's actually a substantive addition having to do with the bus pull-off. So I added, the board inquired with the Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority regarding the amount of frontage necessary. It was informed that 80 feet of frontage. The board found that sufficient frontage exists to allow the incorporation of the bus pull-off. Am I right with that?
Was informed that
So it was informed that 80 feet of frontage is needed.
is needed, that would be good.
And then 14 was actually, Ken had suggested flipping paragraphs 14 and 15. So paragraph 14 is just what had previously been paragraph 15, with all of the vehicle trip information added. There are no real substantive changes to that. Seventeen, we suggested that the statement be added, the board finds pursuant to the testimony and submittals of its traffic peer review consultant at the intersection of Lantern Lane and Main Street currently operates at a level of service F, and then additional language during the weekday afternoon peak hour.
Okay, so that's an additional change over what we
Yep.
received, earlier.
So that
I'm
was-
sorry, I lost track.
I don't think it's maybe it's 17 now, but it's at the bottom of page 4, right? Oh.
Yeah, so it starts off, the board finds pursuant to the testimony and submittals of its traffic peer review consultant.
Okay.
Then at the bottom, the board also finds that such improvements will discourage traffic flow, and this is additional north through Lantern Lane onto Dillingham Avenue. I'm not sure to the extent that my numbers line up with yours. The next one, I add as number 17, it was 19. The project will connect to the Falmouth Municipal Water and Municipal Sewer Systems. And then there's the statement, and will contribute approximately 6.5% of the total flow to the municipal wastewater treatment facility. And that was taken from a letter, I believe, from DPW, was it, or sewer department?
That's not the changes.
That was one of the suggestions we kept. Was that-
Okay.
Right, because didn't we get a message from Amy Lynn to that effect?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I changed 18, the applicant proposes to construct 154 parking spaces.
Mhm.
That's-
Oh, so
With
we
the
should
waiver?
change,
The application says 156.
The applicant proposes to, the waiver request is 154, isn't it?
But if that's the recent one, then are we paying attention to that? Because the recent one is based on the changes to the facade of the building. That's the email I sent you earlier. I'm very concerned we need to go through those waivers because I think
Okay.
we're getting confused with, he revised them based on the changes that this board's not accepting with the facade.
Okay.
I don't know where else he would have dropped to.
Well, the other thing that came up in the discussion was whether there might be support columns that would interfere
But
with
that
it.
hasn't been
That's-
proven
yeah,
yet, so we
that's-
can't take that into
so-
consideration.
Okay, I just was wondering if they might have.
Yeah, that'll come in the final
Account for that.
plans, and then that'll be a modification, and the board will determine if that's substantial.
All right, so why don't I run that in the waiver requests through Brian Wilson?
Yeah.
Have him take a look at them and make sure.
I'm really concerned that we're going to possibly allow something that we shouldn't be because you're not accepting that plan.
Gotcha.
Because that's when the waivers changed.
Okay. Next one, on-site
So that's a question
amenities.
mark on the number?
Yep. The next one, on-site amenities will include an in-ground pool with a pool house and a small children's play area. And then I have a new paragraph after that. And I got the percentage of impervious surface from Brian. So now it says approximately 73% of the site will consist of impervious surface, with the remainder consisting of pervious surface. The board found that the total amount of impervious area is excessive, and that the applicant, I should say shall, reduce the amount of impervious surface by including pervious pavement and outdoor parking areas to the greatest extent practicable.
I have a couple of questions on that.
Okay?
The first being, do we add this to the conditions? I think we should add a separate condition saying that the applicant shall, I guess incorporating the second half of that.
Yep.
And I know last week I asked about, I guess, to the greatest extent practicable, because couldn't the I'm just concerned that the applicant says, well, it's not practicable, I'm not going to do it. And so I want it to have some teeth, and I don't know if we can over and above that.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how you would craft that then, because we don't have a plan showing where they would include
Right.
that pervious pavement. So that's why I tried to identify it as outdoor parking areas.
And we can't just say in outdoor parking areas, period.
Well, I wonder if we could say, because we don't know what, when they revise, right, if for example, there's a denial of some of the setbacks, that's gonna reduce the total impervious coverage, presumably.
Yep.
So we really don't know where they're gonna end up in terms of lot coverage, do we?
No, we just know where they are now.
Yeah. So you wanna write this from where they are now, is that the?
No, we don't really have any other
Yeah.
choice.
It all, based on some of the conditions that you've discussed and some of the findings for the conditions, it's gonna change, which is why there's a final review, and I think the final review should be by the board, not, normally you leave the final review to me, but in this
Yeah, no, I
instance,
would
it really needs to be reviewed by the board.
No question about it. Well,
Wow.
in any event, I think that.
What he said.
Thanks, Ed.
We're gonna have to add a condition that addresses this, so that's
Mhm.
probably the best place to address that. I think the finding is fine as it is.
Yeah.
And I think the condition will just simply have to craft it to, tie it to the submittal of final plans and have the board review it.
So rather than saying pervious pavement, well, couldn't we say alternative pervious surfaces? Because it might not be, conceivably, they could put gravel or shell, or, they might figure out some alternative other than pavement. We've heard various projects presented to us, and the argument has been made that pervious pavement doesn't really work, so, I don't know, they might.
In a development this size, they're not gonna put shells and
Well-
stones, and it's gonna be pavement because
It's gonna require.
it's gonna be
snow
easier to
removal.
take care of for the management and the snow plowing and stuff, so you kinda gotta craft it
I'm just
around the
saying we-
landscaping and open space, the
But
pool areas.
writing it a little more generically, it becomes up to them to figure it out, not so much. You wanna stick with pervious pavement? It's okay.
You can go with pervious surfaces.
I think, why don't we do that?
To what end?
It may end up being pavement, but it may not.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is there going to be a follow-up to that? To what end, to give them,
But we're gonna have to
Scope.
craft a condition to address that. And it's basically gonna punt the specifics to the submittal of final plans. All right, 21, just a small addition, given the size and proximity I added to the parking garages. What I have listed as 29 starts, the board finds that the examples shown by its peer review consultant, Glenn Fontecchio, contained in his April 3rd, 2017 letter. And I added at the end, as well as to provide suitable amenities for the residents of the project, if no commercial space is provided. So this was something that was suggested by Ken. I added the if no commercial space is provided, because obviously if they decide to provide commercial space rather than amenity space, then this is not for the purpose of providing additional
Right,
amenities.
so they could do it either way, within the project or.
Right, and ultimately you're leaving that as to the discretion of the applicant, rather than dictating, what they would use it for. Because really your concern is, again, how it connects to the streetscape.
Right.
Number 31, just added massing and reduced setbacks. And we still need to really talk about that issue as part of the waiver discussion.
The setbacks?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
32, eliminated the term side yard.
Mhm.
And now it just says the board finds that the proposed setbacks of 3 feet to 5 feet is inadequate to address local concerns.
Would you say are? Plural. right?
Yes, are.
That's what it said, setback. Still
can you put a
need-
question mark by that one?
Okay.
Again, I think we're looking at the plans that you guys didn't approve for that 3-foot, right? Unless you're talking, are you talking back on the east side by the townhouses?
That came from the waiver, so that could be.
Okay. If we could put a question mark, we'll check that.
And we also still need to include the finding about the frontage. And where the board might find as to where the frontage is.
Well, do you want to talk about that one right now?
Sure. So he did give me some language, I just haven't had the opportunity to add it
Okay.
yet.
So what, well, what was Terry's language? Do you have it?
Well, she cited the provision of the bylaw that talks about, the building department having the discretion to determine the frontage.
Building commissioner.
So are we determining it?
So-
We
Yes,
would.
we are. We're the local.
And so we need to obviously determine front yard or side yard.
Well, I think you've established by the,
Main
accepting the
Street.
setback that Main Street is, instead of Lantern Lane being required with 20, it can have 10, so.
Yeah. I would say so, is everybody?
Yeah,
I agree with that.
yeah,
Otherwise, they could be,
right. I think that's the best option.
It'd be interesting to change that.
Well,
well,
then when they make the revised plan, we're gonna suffer.
You'd have less of a setback to Main Street. You'd have more of a setback along the length of the property.
I agree.
it's kind of late to do that now, Kimberly.
Yeah.
Because it's
I
not fair
thought
to the
about it.
applicant to rebut.
Well, I
And
thought,
all the way along, you guys assumed that Main Street was the front yard, correct?
I think because of the, to be consistent with business redevelopment district, which is really the argument for local concern, because that's been our planning
Right,
item, but that's really the front.
I think that's fair. It would have been interesting. So.
I thought about it. On 33, I just have one word, including at the end of the first line, a sidewalk with buffer. We'll just add the word with. Because the sidewalk is not the buffer.
Okay. So the next new finding, the board finds the applicant did not work with the board regarding the bulk massing and compatibility with the surrounding streetscape, despite the fact that this issue was listed in the project eligibility letter as one for the applicant to address during the hearing, and despite the board's clearly expressed concerns, which included retaining a design consultant to provide suggestions on how these impacts could be minimized.
Excellent.
Yes.
And then, next finding, the board finds the applicant did not provide any evidence why a mixed-use development consistent with the municipal planning goals for the BR zoning district was not feasible, despite the instruction in the project eligibility letter that addressed this issue, and despite the board's repeated requests that the applicant consider a mixed-use approach.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Three, on A2, we still need to add just the list of the plans that are, and this really sort of goes to that question on the waivers. We need to list the plans that are the correct
Right.
plans that are being approved by the board.
I'll send you that tomorrow, I'll go through it completely.
And the same for the architecture.
Because I believe the board did not accept any of the revised plans whatsoever, except the turning radius for the emergency equipment.
Right, does anybody, everyone agreed that those revised plans were
Yeah.
no good? Okay, so,
So,
go
you
ahead.
know what, we probably should think about a finding for that. The applicant did submit revised plans, but they did not reduce the massing and actually increased
The set-
Yes, I
the
think
setback
that's
violations.
that's a good finding.
which was not acceptable to me.
Yeah, it didn't address our concern.
Actually did not reduce any massing.
Right, so the applicant did submit proposed revised plans, which did not reduce the massing as requested and which increased rather than decreased setback violations. The board chose not to accept these revised
I
plans.
think you need to note in there that the board reviewed and found them not to be acceptable. And along with that, they also submitted that waiver, revised waivers with those, so I don't know if you want to work that in there.
No, if we're rejecting the plans, the waivers become obsolete. And we go to conditions, which
Okay.
is where we left off.
Yes, so last time I think that we had talked about some, I think we just went through quickly at the end of the last meeting on Thursday to talk about some of the major conditions that we had concerns about. So I don't know if the board wants to go through conditions kind of one by one. It might make sense. And then go through the waivers, that way we know we've hit everything and,
Mhm. I'm just wondering if we should do it in that order or the other order?
well, let's do the waivers first then. I'm fine with that, right, because the waivers have to inform some of our conditions.
Correct.
Is everybody else okay with that? All right.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think.
So, page, I don't know, we're on page 23 of the copy version that I have.
That's what I have.
Exhibit A, waivers pursuant to the waiver list revised and submitted to the board.
Hold on, hey.
Sri, are you looking for it? Is
I'm gonna compare the two.
that, okay.
Sorry, I
No, that's,
tried to get this done this afternoon and I couldn't.
okay, so. All right, so pursuant to the waiver list revised and submitted to the board, the applicant has requested and the board has granted waivers from the Falmouth zoning bylaw and other local bylaws and regulations as specified in Exhibit B attached here too. What's Exhibit B, Paul?
This should be, what is it?
Says it in the first paragraph,
No, it should say exhibit.
as specified. Well, it should say in this exhibit,
This exhibit.
in this exhibit.
Just here.
And not attached to here too.
Right. No waivers are granted from requirements that are beyond the purview of General Law, Chapter 40B, Sections 20 to 23. No waiver, permits, or inspection fees are granted. Town of Falmouth zoning bylaws. The project site is located in the business redevelopment and residential C zoning districts. Dimensional waivers. Lot A. Multifamily use in a BR zoning district, applicant proposes 40 units in a district, which allows a total of 8 units per acre. Board action. If we approve that.
So what my recommendation
yes.
would be, is that the board grant the waivers with regard to the number of units, but that it note that such grant is subject to the conditions within the decision, limiting the other waiver requests, and requiring the changes to the design consistent with the letter from Glenn Fontecchio.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that
Mhm.
course of action? So that's what we'll do. Number 2, multifamily use in an RC zoning
That's,
district.
I mean,
Oh, sorry.
that's going to be the same, yeah, that's gonna be the same as the previous one. It's just,
Okay.
they broke it down into,
Each
number of
zoning
units
district.
located in each, but ultimately it's the total number of units that you really want to
Okay.
look at.
Well, I'll just read it aloud for the people who are here. Multifamily use in an RC zoning district, applicant proposes 2 units in a district which allows 1 single-family dwelling per lot. So we'll do the same. Front yard setbacks in a BR zone. I'll have to just change some of this word. Zoning district. Applicant proposes a minimum front yard setback of 3 feet in a zoning district requiring a minimum setback of 25 feet. So we said, that's incorrect, based on what we just said.
So it's a 20-foot requirement?
It is a 20-foot requirement in a business redevelopment. It's 25 in a residential. I think they're
Right.
confused.
Yeah, that's,
So it's 20 feet,
You need to reverse 3 and 4, basically, is what he's doing.
Reverse the requirement.
Right.
this should say 20 feet because it's in the BR.
Right, and then number 4 is in residential, and that's 25 feet.
okay.
And that should say 25.
But this,
Now, what we,
The question is whether or not it's actually 3 feet.
it's not.
Not in the front yards, no.
Front yard, it complies.
Well, he's
well, it
talking
does in
about,
the BR.
This is where it's very important.
Well, I think
The
he's looking at a
240-13.
different area as the front yard. That's part
because
of it.
once you determine that Lantern Lane is a side yard,
Mhm.
those townhouses, which are in the residential, will have a requirement of 10 feet, and they're asking for whatever it is, 5 feet.
And that's because they're merging them into two lots, right? So in other words,
That's because you
It's a
have
side
two roads. which
right, I
you have
understand, but
two-
if they were 4 lots, then
There's 6
the townhouses would be on a separate lot and would have their own front yard.
So we need to find what the setback is that's proposed for the front yard.
No, I'm asking.
Yeah,
Do we have the,
Yes,
I mean, we must have the original plans that we're going off of.
they're right there. Except for the turning radiuses, those
well,
plans are pretty
I got lots of
similar.
versions.
I was reading off of these last week and
You should have
I think I was told these weren't,
these plans.
all right, so I have a question about this to Paul.
Okay?
I guess this is in terms of so they're showing lots A and B is not including the private way. Do they own the center line?
And then according to the derelict fee statute,
Right.
there's a presumption
That-
that they
yes.
would own. Haven't done any
So
title
it's not,
research.
right, okay,
But they can't
But
use
we
that
can-
to satisfy zoning
right,
requirements.
and we can treat that as just a way and there are lots on each side.
So how do you define the
Just
road
wanted to
layout?
confirm.
The road layout is whatever easement.
Okay, so
So what is the setback from Main Street?
it's 20 feet, that's the closest point, so that complies.
No,
Okay.
we're talking the townhouses.
No,
They're
we're
not-
talking the setback from Main Street right now.
Oh, I thought he said Lantern Lane, I'm sorry.
No,
No.
Main Street.
So you want to
Yeah, no,
reword
that's
this
okay,
to
sorry.
say something like,
He doesn't need a waiver from the front setback requirement.
So it's showing 20 feet?
It's showing 20 feet, and 20 feet's what's required. We
so
treat,
should we have something explicit that says, no waiver is required?
Correct.
The plan shows da-da-da, and then,
You gotta put the plan date in there so it's not too confused.
that's it, yeah, so they were treating, were they treating Lantern Lane as a front yard?
I think they might have been.
All right, so board action for this will say, the board found that the front yard for the project is Main Street. The applicant's proposal shows a setback of 20 feet. That should say from Main Street.
From the front yard, front property line,
Yep.
not Main Street.
Right.
So the rest are side and rears.
The board determined that no waiver is required for front setback, thus this waiver request is denied.
Number
Okay,
2,
I like that.
'Caught you on.
Kim got one. I
3. One's denial.
don't think they had setbacks to Lantern Lane, to answer your question, Kimberly. They had it to the side properties behind.
They show a 3-foot,
To that side or rear property line, not to,
they show, so I don't
but
know.
it is non-conforming regardless, but they didn't show a setback there.
They show from, so I'm looking, Lot A, that rear townhouse, sorry.
Right,
So the unit to the north, that front corner of it says 3 feet.
I can only see it being measured to the rear, not off Lantern Lane.
No, this is 3.
Let me look at my, can't even read these, they're so
What is this
small.
dash line?
Well, when we get bigger plans, I can fill that in, Paul,
So this is the
Send
Main
it to
Street
you.
layout.
because I can't read these small PDFs. Can anybody else, can you, is that from Lantern Lane?
Yes,
or
so it
is
says
from-
3 feet in the front right corner of that
But it,
proposed.
where's, is the arrow coming from the
No.
property to the north?
No, it's coming from Lantern Lane. right, I can show you, do you want me?
If I can see it.
Yeah. It's, I mean, it is
I can read
small, but that says 3 feet.
But that's
See where the
not-
arrow's at?
The front,
It's the front one.
So 3 feet.
Plan I have shows the arrow from right here,
Oh,
going back.
but
So
that is
this is
not for a
also-
front setback.
That's
it's for a
five.
side
Correct.
setback.
Okay,
It's
But
been
that's
set as the
three,
side
yeah,
setback.
so that needs a waiver, and this back over here is still off Lantern Lane,
right.
and there's no setback,
There's
because
no
that corner is
setback
not
provided.
shown.
All right, so let's,
What's the date of that plan, Kimberly?
This is the first plan that they submitted.
Okay.
what is their setback in the RC zone?
It's 10 for side and 25 for front, side and rear is
But what are they providing?
5 and 3.
3 for front yard. And 3, that point that you just made about that proposed
So the
building,
RC
4.
The RC zone is correct. They have it.
Right, it was the front yard that they had the requirement for that was incorrect.
No, no, but that's what I was asking. What is the front yard that they're proposing for the RC zone?
There is no front
But
yard
that's
because
going
the
to be
board
side.
determined Lantern Lane to be a side yard.
Okay,
And it's just, and they merged the lots, right?
so there is no front yard in the RC zone?
I think because they merged the lots, that's what I was
Well,
trying to
it's,
say.
no, it's just that
No,
they,
it's-
it's just that the front yard setback has been set as Main Street. All the other perimeter lines would be
Right.
considered side yards.
Right.
So that would be a 10-foot requirement.
But so there's a
Right.
front setback for the RC zone,
Which is 25 feet,
which is 25 feet. So if it
but
were
they don't need a
applicable,
waiver for that.
well, if they're only at 20 feet, then they would need it.
No, because there's no front yard.
But the front yard is not within the RC zone.
Right.
Right. So you don't need a waiver for the front yard in a residential C. So deny it. So the board made the determination, right?
Yeah. The board set it as Main is the front, everything else is the side.
Right.
Okay. Paul, are you still working on that one? Really number these because. Okay.
All right, the board determined that the front yard for the project is Main Street. There is no portion of the front setback within the RC zoning district, therefore there is no applicable front setback requirements. Accordingly, this request is denied.
Yes. All right, so the next item is the last one on that page. I would, if we can number these, I can take care of it in a red line version. Side yard setbacks in the BR zone. Applicant proposes a minimum side yard setback of 5 feet in a zoning district requiring,
Is that 5 feet or is that 3 feet?
That says 5.
this
I
says
know, but
5.
But we've changed,
No, this is what, I'm just reading what it
In the
says.
BR
Yeah.
zone. In the BR zone,
The
it's
closest
5.
setback that they have is 5 feet.
In the RC, it's 3. It says 5 in the RC though.
It's 5 at one point and 3 at another point.
right. So we should be changing.
Wait, what, we're confused, I think we're confused, can we just take these one at a time, because I think we're confused.
What
now.
number are you on?
So the very last one,
Do you not have a
Page.
number to it?
no, so I just numbered it 5.
Okay, so you're looking at the draft.
So it says side yard setbacks in the BR zone, so we're only looking at the BR zone. Applicant proposes a minimum side yard setback of 5 feet in a zoning district requiring a minimum side yard setback of 10 feet,
Mhm.
okay? in the BR zone, I think there's only the 5-foot setback. There's the 5-foot setback from the proposed pool house, and there's a 5-foot setback from the building, proposed building 2,
Where 10 is required.
where 10 would be required.
I think it should stay at 10.
Yeah, I think,
Well, this says rear, right? And some of those setbacks that you're talking about are side, right?
This is side yard setback. This, I'm just looking at the draft, the language in our draft.
I know, I numbered it, but I'm confused by it.
well, it's simple for me because I think all the side yard setbacks should be set, no waivers should be granted on.
Yeah, I agree with that very strongly.
So,
Okay, well, let's, okay.
Yeah, I think if you take the position that you're simply not granting side yard setbacks without actually tying it to a local concern,
the local concerns,
jeopardizing, you know, the ability to actually defend this decision later.
local concerns, I mean, this is a large building, no
Well,
shadow study.
So which building is within the setback there? Is this where we would be concerned
Building,
with
The
constructability?
two townhouses,
The townhouses, so,
two townhouses in residential C.
Okay, right now we're just looking at the side yard
We're
setback.
granting them the
VR.
density.
BR, yes. So there's 2 5-foot setbacks that we have to consider. The first is proposed building 2, and the second is the proposed pool house.
I think you need to look at the issue of the constructability. Is that where you have your concern with regard to that?
And
You
they,
need to look at impacts to neighboring properties, and this is one of the townhouses, it's not as large as the other buildings.
we discussed that in one of the findings, I think, didn't we?
It's not one of the townhouses.
So it's one of the larger buildings.
So, yeah, so all we're looking at right now, we will get to the townhouses, is proposed building 2, which is the large building.
Okay,
And then the pool house, which also has a 5-foot setback. Everything else complies. Proposed building 1 complies, that's an 11-foot setback.
Yeah, and there's no reason why the pool house can't be moved 5 more feet or reoriented so that it fits on there.
You know what else proposed building 1 has? A 1-foot setback on the side. Adjacent to Lantern Lane,
What is,
based on this plan.
what's the date? I'm sorry.
10/21/16, these are the first plans that we received in this packet.
Okay, so what waiver are you looking at?
Just the side yard setbacks in the BR zoning district.
He's got 5 feet plus 10 feet required on the original waiver. So what you guys may be looking at in the draft is something that was picked up based on the revised that you haven't accepted, is that correct?
well, we've got them asking for a waiver to allow 5 feet where 10 feet is required.
Okay. I'm sorry, I thought somebody said 3 feet, I apologize.
Well, they're looking now at the plans, and they may not have actually requested the relief that they need.
Yeah, that's possible.
What are the controlling plans? I mean, is it this
Let's
first
work
set?
backwards, what setbacks do you want?
I think it should be 10 feet.
I just,
I think we gotta look at what they're asking for and consider each one
Well,
one
we
by
do.
So
one.
you're saying we don't have the latest revised plan?
Well, I'm wondering,
So they
We-
submitted revised plans that this board has chosen not
Not
to.
to.
what's,
Right.
where,
right, so are we working off of the first plans? Because there were multiple revisions over.
As I said, you are, except for the turning radius, and the turning radius changed to the northwest into the 2 condos.
Okay, so that's the only change in terms of setbacks?
I'm
Yes,
pretty sure.
okay. So proposed building 2, again, this is the main building on lot A, that large one. They're proposing a 5-foot setback.
And those aren't
They
even.
always were.
And they always were,
I think so,
and they've expressed,
that they can
we've
do it.
expressed concern about maintenance,
Mhm.
shadow impacts.
But so the feedback you got from your design consultant
Yes,
is a way to address the concern with regards to the shadowing is to step it back and reduce the massing in that regard.
and that's only in the front portion of that building.
Okay, so you want to make them, also make the building smaller as well.
Yes.
At some point, you get to that, they're gonna be allowed to build about 20 units. And that's going to be, that's gonna be determined to be a denial rather than an approval with conditions. And everything else that you put in here is just gonna be ignored.
I think we're a long way from that.
I
We
mean,
still
yeah,
have
and
to talk
I,
about height waivers as well.
Right. I mean, remember, they're locating all their parking under the building, so they have a very large building on the site. Much larger. Probably 3 times the size of what's permitted.
I'm concerned, obviously, we're doing all of this because we want it to be upheld, we want these conditions enforced. At the same time, and I said this last week, I feel like we're not able to really craft a project that works for Falmouth, and so,
So what you need to do is you need to look, instead of saying, we're not gonna grant any setback waivers.
well,
you
that's
need-
what we're saying, we're
Well,
going to look at each one individually.
Correct, you need to look at
That's
each
fine.
building and what
Right.
its impact is. I would suggest it really doesn't make a lot of sense to dig your heels in on a setback waiver for the pool house. don't
I
think you-
agree.
I don't think you're dealing with major impacts there,
I agree,
right?
yes.
If you're talking about, I mean, it's a 5-foot shift, maybe they can do it without losing any units and.
Well, the pool house, I mean, there's plenty of, I guess my point is, the way the pool house is oriented, they could reorient it, and basically it fits, they're not sacrificing anything to achieve that waiver.
Let's just move it on the drawing.
I think a better approach with regard to not approving a 5-foot setback waiver is not to say they have to comply. It might be, this waiver is denied because they didn't submit information with regard to shadowing impacts that the board had requested.
Well, I agree with that.
And not set, that 10-foot is what is required, because maybe 8-foot would work, but you didn't give us the information to let us know.
You're talking just the BR zone right now, correct?
Yes, just that one
Okay.
along the western property side,
This side here.
the 5-foot right there.
Yeah,
Cutting
here
your
you have an
lines.
enormous building. I mean, I just think,
So, I guess, Paul, from a standpoint of this gets appealed, or if it were to get appealed,
Presuming that you're relying upon their failure to submit information.
which is what we're relying on.
Correct,
Yes.
on this aspect. You push for a remand back to this board for them to come back and actually show you plans.
That's the goal.
So we deny,
You
And say
deny the
that there's a
waiver
lack of
without any
information.
specificity.
I think that's,
but then if they come back,
if there was information submitted at that time that showed that there was no impact.
I mean, this, whether it's a 3-story building or a 4-story building, 5 feet ain't enough to service the building. And you can't. I think on the western side, with Lot A, is this building 1, is that?
Yes, building 2.
So with regard to whether or not they have the capacity to actually service the building, construct it, and actually
Right.
maintain it, that is something that we would be requiring them to provide information as part of final plans that could be peer reviewed by a structural engineer by the board.
Well, we asked them during one of the hearings,
And what they said was they would agree to that as part of submittal of final plans.
they submitted some information on a scissor lift, and it was for one to be used inside a, I don't know, a big showroom or something, not a smooth floor.
Yeah, the consultant said you need a 7-foot wide scissors lift. They've submitted one that was 4 feet 11 or something, or 3 foot
It
11.
was way undersized.
Not suitable for
But
any.
understand, you've already got it built in that you will be able to address the constructability issue, and if they
So you
can't
just wanna
satisfy
include the
it,
wording.
they won't be able to do it.
Right.
And then they would have to increase the setback.
So you wanna word it so that it's a little more defensible.
Correct.
Fair enough.
Okay, so that's just in regard to that building two.
Yep.
Yeah, let's take this one at a time. The next one that I see that's under 10 feet is building 1 to Lantern Lane. Does anybody else see that? It looks like it says 1 foot.
Where are you?
Right here. Where is it? Oh, okay, so so we're right here, 1 foot. See this right here? 1 foot.
Yeah.
Overhang floors above, it says. Ken's working off of different plans than I have to. So it shows it 1 foot from Lantern Lane. In that area, we don't have shadow concerns.
Well, we have canyon effects. It's a narrow street.
It's gonna overshadow building two.
Overshadow the roadway.
It's not in scale. I mean, for a large building like this, you need to have greater setbacks.
That's right.
I mean, and Paul, is it more defensible? They didn't give us any of this information, and so the project eligibility letter said, you need to work with the town as to massing, bulk, scale.
Well, it's certainly defensible to say that they had an obligation to provide this information. It was a reasonable request. I mean, you literally have a local bylaw that allows you to request it. And I've had it requested many times when there's no local bylaw that you could point to. So it's certainly defensible to say that this was important information for the board to review, and the applicant was wrong not to provide it.
Okay, so this 1 foot setback, does anybody have any strong feelings about that?
I think the requirement should be for 10-foot setbacks.
I don't think we can do it there, Ken. I don't
Why
think we
not?
can do 10 feet there.
Why not? There's no landscaping, there's excessive lot coverage. It's unclear to me, I mean, so, how many units they still can produce? It's gonna be way in excess of what is allowed under the 8 units per acre.
But that doesn't matter. When the HAC is reviewing this, they are not going to look at how many more units they have than what is allowed under the local zoning. This is
That's what the
chapter 40B.
comprehensive permit's about.
Right, so that's not a relevant concern.
But why does this make it uneconomic?
They haven't said that yet.
Right.
I can,
Well, they've already done the pro forma, not to cut you off. Wasn't all this evaluated?
well, they submitted a pro forma as part of the project eligibility
Mass
application.
Housing relies on that.
Right. But, I
They-
mean,
Absolutely, they are going to go to the Housing Appeals Committee. They're going to have a pro forma expert that is going to provide testimony that will say that this decision renders the project uneconomic.
right.
The
Then
board
it's up
will
to us
obviously
to
retain
defend.
its own pro forma analyst to take a look at that issue, and certainly attempt to show that it doesn't render the project uneconomic. But my goal throughout here has been to presume that your conditions will render the project uneconomic, and yet have them be defensible anyhow.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that should be our goal, or this is my perspective, my thoughts on it. I think that should be our position. Why go through all of this if we're just going to effectively grant a denial and then get this project built exactly as they proposed it? Yeah, I don't wanna bend. I mean, I'd be the first to say a 1 foot or a 5 foot setback doesn't make sense.
I think it's
you know,
better the way that we're discussing, which is to simply state that the setback waiver, because they didn't provide sufficient information to determine all of the impacts, is denied.
And we can do that just,
We don't need to tell them what their,
we can do
what an
that for the
acceptable
BR
setback would
zone,
be.
okay. And that will be obviously across the board, but I think that 3 foot or 5 foot is inaccurate. I mean, unless the plans have changed. It shows a 1 foot off of Lantern Lane
They probably weren't looking at that
as a side yard.
as a setback concern, since it's The layout, is it the layout of Lantern Lane rather than the traveled portion? Probably.
I mean, there's
You'd probably say
there's a
it's
little bit of a
40-foot layout.
sidewalk there.
Well, it's a private road, so I doubt if it's a 40-foot.
No, it's,
No,
well,
it's
it says
22
40 foot,
feet.
it says 40-foot wide private way on the plans.
Yeah, but the-
But it actually constructed is 22
The
feet.
pavement is 22 feet.
Yes.
All right, so you're looking at the line of Lantern Lane and not the layout, so that's probably the issue that they have, and that's what they're going.
So that goes a little bit to your
Wow.
your review of this, because impacts are different. If it's 1 foot from a layout, but it's, 20 feet or 12 feet, or whatever it is from
9 feet, I guess.
from the property line, from somebody else's property,
Right.
the impacts are different.
Well, on building 2, there's more buffer than on building.
I think the board might just be better served, I don't know. I mean, I think we want to apply the shadow study to the waiver requests for every building where it really is pertinent.
Right.
So, building 2, the large buildings. I mean, the
Building
lack of a
1 and
shadow
2.
study for the townhouses really doesn't impact.
Fair
your
enough.
decision.
Right. Right. So building 1 and building 2, as we know, 1 has the 1 foot.
And are they both located in the BR?
Those are,
Yes.
yes.
So the board found that without the information that would have been part of a shadow study, it does not possess sufficient information to approve a waiver of the side yard setback. Accordingly, the waiver for building 1 and 2 are denied.
I like that.
So what else is located within the BR zone?
So those are the building 1 and 2. The pool house is the other one.
Okay.
I understand what Ken and Ed are saying. Why can't you just move the pool house off, 10 feet, you have it.
No, they have to move it 5 feet.
5 feet, right, but 10 feet off the property line. But do I
So that
think,
affects the abutter. I mean, that's the problem.
Does it impact their ability to reconfigure those buildings to try to comply with the other setbacks?
I don't think so. Not for the pool house.
No, it's not by itself, and 5 feet doesn't make any difference back there. More.
I mean, I think if there's a way to say that the board sees no, the board feels the project can be completed while conforming to the setback and protecting the abutter adjacent, there's no hardship imposed on the,
That's not the standard for 40B.
well,
This is not a variance request.
yeah, I don't see why they can't comply with the 10 feet. That being said, if we're
Right,
gonna
so if
push
you want
back
to,
on
you
some
can,
others.
you can add another sentence. The board also found the proposed pool house located within the BR zone can be reconfigured to eliminate the need for a waiver.
there you go.
Yes.
Something like that.
Very good.
And you might say in this, I don't know if you can say it or not, that it protects the abutter.
Okay, so those were all of the side yard setbacks that we
We
were
have the side yard setbacks in the RC zone.
in the RC. We have a 3 foot to the townhouse. We have a 5 foot on the other side of that townhouse. And we have an indeterminable setback at the front corner of building 4, which they just cut off.
It was 5 feet on the original plans. I don't know why it's cut off even in these. But it was 5 feet.
Oh, I see it over here on this side. So they're showing it as 9 feet on this plan. Of course, it could be, see, it's over here, Ken. So it's showing as 9 feet on yours.
So is there a building number for that townhouse?
4.
Proposed building, which townhouse?
The one on the east side, right, by the pool? Is that the one you're looking at?
So there's there's a 9 foot setback, which I would think would be,
Which one has the 3 foot setback?
that's proposed building 3. That's on the lot A,
West.
adjacent to Lantern Lane, 5 Lantern Lane.
All right, so the question is, they've only requested a 5-foot setback waiver. So if you want to grant
For which one?
5 feet,
3 are we
they can
talking
move
about?
that
Yes.
2 feet further back.
No, he's saying period in residential.
Oh,
They've only asked for a 5-foot, not a 9-foot, right, Paul, is that what you're saying?
They've asked for a minimum side yard setback of 5 feet,
and yet in their
and
plans
yet
it
they've got a
shows
plan that
3.
shows one within 3.
Right.
So I would think, they've only requested 5 feet.
Well, that's because they
Certainly
think,
would, can
that's
just
because they
say-
think that's the front yard, that's why.
What's that got to
And
do?
we,
Well, no, because this is a side yard setback request.
I know.
Oh, so they were looking at that 3-foot one
As being the front yard, that's
Yeah.
why they early on said that they wanted a 3-foot. So I guess we could say, I don't know.
Are there any impacts?
Well, that's a tall,
Where is-
how
where's the
tall is
location?
that? That's a pretty tall townhouse to be 5 feet off.
3 feet.
It meets the requirement of the height, I believe.
It does?
They didn't ask for a waiver on that.
Yeah, I think it's like.
I don't have the
Is
plans
it?
in front
I
of me.
think so.
Why, I was thinking that it was,
No, it's
Oh.
2.5 stories,
maybe see. Oh, it is?
But obviously where it's located,
2 stories.
you know, vis-à-vis abutting properties is important.
Yeah.
You know, if that side setback again is the layout to Lantern Lane, the impact is different than if it's right up against a neighboring property with a house right there.
I would like to, if
So-
we
so that-
could, and, you know, I would like it to comply
Okay?
if, I mean, and maybe it's using the same language about the shadow study to make it,
I don't think the shadow study really would do much.
would have any impact there.
Something that.
No, but what I'm trying to figure out is it's shown as 3, but they're only asking for 5, right?
Well, it's because they thought it was a front.
I know, but if we
So that
approve,
So that 3-foot
if we
one was
approve it as
requested.
5,
They requested the 3-foot setback, they just requested it as a front waiver rather than a side waiver.
right, which we denied. But now it's a side yard, and I'd give them 5 feet there. That moves it back 2 feet.
So we could say that the board grants
A 5-foot.
you know, minimum
This is for
side
building
setback for
3.
the townhouse units of 5 feet.
For building 3.
3, they moved the structure slightly to accommodate the radius for the emergency vehicles showing in there.
Yeah.
And so is it still 5 feet? Sorry, do you know?
Let me see. It's hard for me to see
I mean,
these small
Do,
plans.
I would like to, if,
3 feet's probably not enough for them to actually construct it.
I mean, I'm concerned about the 5 foot on that side yard line.
This one here.
Can you see it?
Look at where the house is next door. I mean, that's
Well, the problem is that they've got
a drive, so
driveway
then
here,
we start
so,
really,
you know, and if they wanted to downsize it to 1 unit, to 1 townhouse, then it would
Yeah,
work.
it's see the emergency vehicles can hold it in and out of
okay, so how does everybody feel? Ed, how do you feel about that 5 foot for that townhouse?
It's gonna be a problem for maintenance, you're gonna be in the middle of the road with crane or scissors, let's say.
Ken, you're okay with that?
I'm okay with 5 here. If this is, they're asking for 9, I think it's de minimis to just, why not just make it 10?
Well, what they're asking for is a minimum side yard setback of 5 feet. They didn't go through for each building and say we
But
want.
we've got to make it
9 to
clear,
this building.
we've got to
But-
make it
but-
clear that it's from the property line, not the street. Because it's very confusing the way that they have this into the actual layout of Lantern Lane.
That's true.
That's
When you
true,
look
yeah,
at the
because the
plans,
building,
It's into the layout of Lantern
I mean,
Lane, so you've got to make sure
Well, I mean,
that
that to
your
an
waivers
extent
are
is
clear.
their fault, right?
Right, but I want our decision to say it's property line,
Maybe there should be,
not
Well,
the
that's
roadway.
how-
maybe there should be
Not the
a,
roadway.
That's how a setback is measured.
From the, I agree, but they're showing it, and I just wanna make sure our decisions, I always.
Should we have
You know-
Not-
kind of
Are
a
we talking about
condition
the
that-
prescribed layout or the traveled way?
They've got it in the prescribed layout.
Okay.
Not in the travel
Right,
lane.
so that-
I want it set straight in the decision.
Because this,
But the traveled way is a road, like, I mean, it's not like it's an abutting property where you're gonna have your scissor lift on Mrs. Smith's property.
Right.
This is within a road layout, I mean, and it's a private way to which these people have the right of access, so I don't perceive it as
I do.
this,
a big deal.
You
this
keep
is
it
like
on
a
your
foot
property.
from the property line.
On the property.
That's-
Lantern Lane
I know, but you
belongs
can
to
use it.
everybody for that roadway.
Well, I
And
know,
it could
but-
become an association in the future. Who
I know, but
knows?
they probably, they do own to the center
Private
line.
roads, Bill.
I know you can't use it for zoning purposes,
You
but you
can't
certainly
use it
have the
for-
right to set up just provided somebody can get by, you'd have the right to.
So what happens if
Use
in
it.
10 years they want the
Not,
town to
not
take
build in
it?
it, not build in it.
No, right, not building it.
No patios, no decks.
Right, no, I agree.
Yeah, but we
Look at the
just
plan.
denied a variance for somebody because, who said, oh, I'm 30 feet back, or whatever it was, from where the road actually is. That's not how you measure it. I
Well,
mean,
but, so we're
it's-
talking about two separate things though. So, I understand what Saria's saying about making sure it's being measured properly.
Mhm.
But that is different from whether or not there are actual impacts associated
Right.
with the waiver,
Right,
right? And in this instance, because there is that area there that is within the roadway layout, that's still theoretically owned by them if the
Yeah.
derelict fee statute applies.
Sure.
The impacts there are less than they would be if it's simply on a side yard abutting a neighbor's house.
I agree.
I don't disagree with that. But, so I mean, this building too, no. So they're showing, for example, on lot A, a 14-foot setback to Lantern Lane in the middle there. It's actually like a 1-foot setback from the property line, and it's just not shown accurately on the plans.
So we've got two separate things there. If they're asking for a 5-foot, and I think
But-
Sam's point is right, that we need to point out that setbacks are measured from the property line.
Yes.
So if they have not requested enough of a setback, that's their problem, and they'll need to come back.
and that's the only reason why I'm asking for that setback to say property line,
Yeah.
not roadway.
Yes.
But the property line, isn't the property line the edge of the road?
No, the
No,
property
it's the
line is
edge of the layout.
Well, correct, that's what I mean, the edge of the traveled way is one thing,
Road layout's
the
another.
prescribed layout is another. The property line extends to the property line on a private way would, I mean, I know they own to the center, but the property line would be the edge of Lantern Lane. Not where it's gravelled, where it's certain, where it's
Where it's
surveyed.
laid out.
Yeah, where it's laid out.
That's
Where
what
the-
we're
where the
saying.
easement
We're
area,
saying the
right.
same thing.
Oh, all right.
So they're basically
they
ignoring
really-
the fact that there is,
They're like a
that
plus
easement
one,
there.
yeah.
So the,
It's- But, I mean,
so in
we
which
ran.
case, this does not grant the relief that they need because they haven't requested the relief that they need.
I know, but then when they come in with the final plan, I mean, that's why it is important to make it so specific, because we're going to say, no, you can't be, this isn't 10 feet off the property line, this is 1 foot, and you didn't ask the right way, because your plans were screwed up, and so now you have to make the building even smaller than what, I mean, it's just, I mean, I know it's
Or
on
they ask
them.
for a,
It just all comes
Another
down
waiver.
to the
Decision.
final plans, the
Correct.
way you craft those waivers, if you're going to, and the building plans, because the final building plans have to show the setbacks to property lines that they're saying.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's not gonna
Right,
get
so-
approved. Right.
unless you have questions regarding particular units, drafted this to say the board finds the plans show a minimum setback of 3 feet for townhouse 3. The board grants a minimum side setback for the townhouse units located within the RC zone of 5 feet. The board notes that all setbacks are measured from the property line. So this would allow the 5-foot setbacks for the townhouse units, but those setbacks are measured from property lines, not from
I think-
private ways.
So a couple of thoughts, I think we need to make that clear on the other things too, and maybe we just make a finding in the decision, a general finding about how setbacks are measured, which seems kind of absurd, but we'll do that.
I think that's fine here, I don't think we need to make a separate finding.
I think it needs to be clear that's not just for this building, it's for every
Well, that's why it says the
portion
board
of
notes
project.
all setbacks are measured from the property.
Okay. And then, I just don't know about that 5 foot, and that's,
Well, if you have a concern,
Got 'em.
then you've got to point to which buildings and which aspects of buildings.
I'm
And why it's
concerned
different.
about proposed building 3, being 5 feet from the property line with that residential,
On the
single-family
north
dwelling
side of buildings.
right there. That's a concern. I mean, I would like to, the best of our ability, protect the interests of a single-family homeowner who purchased expecting 10-foot setback. And I get it, I know, I get it, I
Right,
get
and
it.
that- and
Paul.
so that's
I
the
know.
balancing act that you're
Yes.
faced with there, is if you overload
I know.
all of the, and so does 5 feet or 3 feet or whatever the change would be really make that big of a difference to balance it to the risk of them coming to the Housing Appeals Committee and saying, not only
Look at-
did they
they
not give me
yeah.
these setbacks, they require me to step back at the top, so I'm losing units up there, and not only did they limit me to seasonal rental and anything else that the board's imposed, but they also actually made me lose the townhouse unit,
Right.
you know, because
So
I
how about
can't
we-
reconfigure it to move it 5 feet.
If Kim, I mean, like,
Maybe we
we don't
should-
have to give them 5 feet, or 10 feet
Sorry.
rather, we could give them 7.
It just seems arbitrary at that point.
Yeah, it
How,
does.
what's
And that's
what-
7
and it was
That's
2
what
feet.
the appeals is
10
gonna
feet
say, it
versus
seems
5 feet.
arbitrary.
Correct.
Yeah.
We don't want to be as arbitrary.
Right.
So, I mean, if everybody else is okay with the 5 feet, Paul's shaking his head, yes,
Yeah.
it seems. TJ? Usually I'm the most difficult, or the most, what?
You still are.
Yeah, right now I'm, yeah.
Although Ken's running close.
So,
I'll do my best.
so if everybody's okay with that, I will go along with it if we can really look at landscaping in that area and ensure that there's some additional screening in terms of plantings.
Or fencing.
There you go.
All right, so then moving to.
And then I think the 9 foot is, they're only requesting that.
They're requesting a minimum setback.
And we're
So-
giving them 5,
So we're giving them a minimum of 5, so,
which means they have to move that.
so if they had to,
Proposed
if they
building.
had to move that one that's 3 feet,
Mm-hmm.
2 feet, and therefore they have to move the, and I'm not even looking at the plan, so I don't
Yeah.
know, but that would allow them to move the 9-foot one 2 feet closer, 3 feet closer, you know, if shifting buildings was necessary.
Where are you?
So they can move, okay, so that's, I
Are
guess
you in
that's
building
another
4
concern.
now?
So now we're
Well,
saying.
no, but they can't move buildings without actually coming to you,
Okay.
showing plans and you approving those.
Okay. Because all of a sudden proposed building 4,
Yeah,
which
they-
is a larger
They
building.
can't just move the buildings on the site
Okay.
just because there was a waiver granted, because you're gonna be approving a set of
Final
plans
plan,
that
okay.
show where they are. So if they come back and change that one from 9 feet to 5 feet, you're gonna say, well, wait, it moved 4 feet.
Yeah.
That's a substantial change.
Okay. Okay,
Well, I mean, can't we just do this building by building?
I think that's what we were doing.
Right. So are you saying that for building 4, we're saying they have a 5 foot?
No, it's what Paul was just saying is it's proposed as 9 feet, that's what they have.
Yeah.
If they were to change it, they would have to come back in anyways.
Yeah, but,
So you're only approving building 4 as 9 feet. You're not approving it as 5 feet. You're
Right.
approving a minimum of 5. And that's actually, you know, as shown on the plans, although they're showing one at 3, so you're making them move that one.
okay. But for the 2 big buildings, we're asking for 10 feet.
Well, we're not asking for,
No.
we're asking them to comply,
We're
yes.
denying the
But the
waiver.
We're
waiver was
denying the
denied,
waiver.
so,
With the 2 big buildings.
Okay,
so then we move to rear yard setback in the BR zone.
so,
There isn't a rear.
No.
There are 2 sides and 2 fronts.
they don't have a rear
Okay.
yard. So we'll deny that
Or it's not,
applicable.
right.
that's for both of those?
That's just for rear yard setback and BR zone.
Okay, what about the rear yard and the RC zone?
So that would be the townhouse, that 5 foot that we were just talking about, and so that is, what we just agreed we would allow at 5 feet. We were
That and the side.
interchanging
Rear
it.
and side,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, so the board grants a waiver allowing the minimum rear yard setback of 5 feet.
Yeah. Lot coverage by structures. Applicant proposes a maximum lot coverage by structures of 59%, where a maximum lot coverage of 20% is allowed in both the BR and RC zoning districts. We've addressed in the decision, I know we discussed this last week about lot coverage. We obviously reduced total lot coverage by that condition concerning pavement. How does everybody feel about?
Yeah, so
This is just structures, so.
So I feel like the total lot coverage is where, in my view, we ought to say we're denying the waiver and let them fit the buildings they can fit on.
You're talking
On a
total by
maximum lot coverage of
structures.
20%?
No, 60%.
No, he's saying
77.
allow this
They're saying,
59%.
they're saying they want 77% total
The
lot
total.
coverage.
So you're saying allow the lot coverage by structures, but deny
Deny
by
total lot
structures
coverage.
and parking?
Right. And let them figure out how to,
Well, then what, so to get it down to 60%?
yes.
When the
They're at
structures are already at
59% with the structures.
59%?
Well, they won't be by the time, if they have to
True, if
reduce
you're reducing setbacks.
setbacks. And
I don't think you can allow a lot coverage by structures of 59% and then deny,
60%.
it requires 60% for structures and
so
parking.
would you have a number that you would put there? I mean, the problem is, I don't know.
It's gonna be arbitrary,
Yes.
either way. I think your best course of action here is to
Wow.
allow the waiver, but subject to the condition requiring the permeable parking areas.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I go along with
I think that 77% lot coverage is ridiculous.
But that will wind up coming down based upon denial of setback waivers and based upon the permeable parking areas. So it won't wind up being that, so it's allowed subject to the conditions, that don't let them do quite that much.
Right,
I mean,
that's what the language should be.
in the BR, I think, we, at 60% is a little, is that a little higher than what's, it's not higher than B1, but what was there before? I think we gave them some additional lot coverage
Where-
by right,
in what district?
BR.
Do you want to go to 240-240
Yeah.
in your book, please? I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
I brought this and forgot my zoning.
that. You got it right here.
240-240.
No, I mean, that is,
Yeah.
Is that the new book? It might be in 240-69A as well. They just passed a bylaw to put it into the regular lot coverage, where it should have been.
TJ, do you have it right there?
What is it, sir?
Oh, I didn't.
It could be under
69.
240-69 in the new
Yeah,
reprinted.
yeah, this is a new one.
Okay, BR. It's probably at the bottom of the list. If not, it's in 240-240B, 2B.
So B1 is 90%, B3 is 65, B2 is 70.
Two, I think. 60% is in business redevelopment.
Right.
So what are you, I'm sorry, did I miss the question? Did I hear it? Are you comparing it with the business redevelopments? I mean, the business districts?
Yes.
So you go to 240-69,
Yeah, to here.
69A.
Yeah, no, I'm looking.
Business,
So the biggest one is business 3 at 65%,
Good.
business 2 and in light industrial A are 70.
Business 1 is 90, almost 100%.
Right, it's not business one.
And we're on the setbacks in here, basically.
Paul and TJ, how do you guys feel about lot coverage?
I don't, I mean, I'm just thinking, and I know the board's acting in the best interest and has good intentions, but like, as the hearing's progressing, I'm just wondering, I'm saying to myself, you know, is our attorney getting a funny feeling? And are we crossing a line where all of a sudden this just gets kicked out totally and the abutters lose and it gets built as originally proposed? I know we have to try, I'm just wondering where that barometer is, where
Well, that
we
is-
start to wander into an area where now we're getting
Arbitrary.
none of this.
Yes.
And
That's just not-
that's
I'm just-
why,
Yeah.
what I've been saying all along, as long as it's being tied to something that you can point to and say, this is an issue of local concern, I'm less worried about the Housing Appeals Committee, no matter what the impacts are on the unit counts. I'm less worried the HAC is gonna look at that and say, this is really just a denial masquerading as an approval with conditions.
Well,
Right.
we've said there's inadequate landscaping. We've said, you know,
I don't think that we can justify reducing lot coverage.
I don't think so. I think
Based
it would
on
be
what we-
arbitrary.
No, we can't.
Except
And
for
I'm
the
not-
extent that it's already being reduced by
Right.
the other waiver
Conditions.
denials and by the permeable pavement condition.
And if it's allowed per conditions, as stated, then it's going to be reduced slightly again.
got no choice.
I mean, we're not gonna get around this one without it appearing to be, in my opinion, arbitrary, but I'm not the board.
Yeah, I mean, I know we have to try, because we can't just blanketly agree
You
on
know,
all
my
this,
reading
but-
of the mass housing letter is, you know, talk about massive. I mean, you know, this is the more building, the more parking, the more everything you put on. This is-
But Ken, understand,
Excessive.
the mass housing letter in those areas simply regurgitates the comments that mass housing received from the town during the comment period. It's not something that is,
It's gonna
the
stand up
HAC
in
is
appeals.
bound to uphold in its decision to any degree. So we can point out where they were uncooperative and didn't address these issues, and I think it's helpful certainly to note that, but it's not something that you can hang your hat on and say, this is why our decision should be upheld.
I think we should set, I mean, 77% is ridiculous. And if you wanted to go to.
But it's gonna be reduced.
It's
by the
arbitrary,
conditions.
Ken, if you say 70 versus 75 versus, I mean, who are we to?
Well, it's consistent with our own zoning regulations.
But
But
that's
it can-
the purpose of 40B, is
Correct.
that they get waivers from zoning regulations.
They're gonna
because
turn
they-
and point
Which they are
to
getting.
your business zone requirements that allow 90%.
And 70%.
Yeah, I mean,
So an average, hello, it's 80%.
We're in this situation because we need affordable housing, and so,
Where you're reducing the lot coverage because of specific concerns, this building is too close, it needs to be pulled back, right? There's too much pervious pavement, so where you can implement, I'm sorry, there's too much impervious area, so where you can implement
Well, there's-
pervious pavement, that will allow a reduction. But simply saying, there's too much impervious surface on the property, therefore let's reduce it by.
Inadequate
10%.
landscaping. There needs to be,
Well, but in that case, you're talking about add a requirement that they provide additional landscaping.
there has to be space to landscape if it's all covered with parking lots.
Well, if we're
and
saying
buildings.
there's a,
There isn't
they're
It's not in
allowed
the
a
standards,
maximum,
basically.
they
Right.
can do
Right.
less
That's
than
good
that.
You know, landscaping's not in the standards of 40B, although it is with local concern.
It
So
has-
again,
all of these things are local
again, the housing
concerns.
appeals is gonna look at it and they're
The
gonna
general
say,
size of the project is a local concern.
It-
But
it's-
that's-
not when
That's
it comes
exactly
to
what
state
40B was designed
requirements.
to encourage, is affordable housing.
I think
This
you're
is snob zoning.
You're sticking on a point that's
We're
not.
not, it's not subzoning, we're letting them put in more density, we're letting them put in a larger
That's what the
building.
40B's about.
Yes,
I know,
all
I'm
of that's
just worried, though,
happening, but a reasonable limit.
I'm just worried that we'll get none of it and the residents won't get anything that abut it. That's just my concerns. I think, I mean.
This is a
again,
balance.
You guys are,
It
yeah, I
is,
mean.
it is. I say let,
Everyone on the board is well-intentioned.
they're already putting all of the parking under the building so that they can make the building bigger. Why do they still need to exceed the total lot coverage?
For, I mean, I'm,
But
Business
honestly,
purpose.
Because they
because
couldn't
they're not
find a
asking
5-acre
for a
site.
significant waiver of your parking requirements. They could reduce their parking significantly and therefore reduce their impervious area. And that might be, you know, what their response would be.
Be okay with it.
Well, if the board's going to make a finding that in fact there is more parking than is what is necessary, and that they can reduce 20 parking spaces outdoor and replace it with landscaping, then that is the sort of finding that actually is upholdable.
I mean, I don't know, it just goes against what we normally request of applicants. We won't normally want to see plenty of parking.
I'm concerned about guest space, I mean,
Me too.
we limit it and the next thing you know, where are these cars going to go?
And
Parking
that's
on Ladder
a
Lane.
fair question.
Right, which is.
But that's gonna be
obviously
what their response is. We came as close as possible to complying with the parking requirements, which, on these projects, that's usually one of the first waivers you see, particularly on a rental. You know, they're looking to do 1.3, 1.4 spaces per unit. They haven't done that, and that's where they will go if you limit their impervious area, because that's where they can make it up.
Yeah, I mean, the law is on their side in all of this. That's why
We
I
get-
just think we have to be really careful.
We have to, I don't wanna say give on some, but we do have
I
to.
think we're giving them
I
the
understand.
building lot coverage, waivers they request. The total lot coverage, I think it's excessive.
If we allow that, will you sign the decision? Will you, because you have 4 people, I think, saying,
I'm opposed to the total lot coverage going to 77%.
I don't think that we can reduce that. I really
I
don't.
either.
It's gonna
It's
get reduced by
arbitrary.
the,
And
It's
And let's
arbitrary.
reduce it to what? You say they're only allowed 65%? And what is that tied to? You're just pulling that number out of thin air.
it's gonna get reduced by the fact they're gonna have to move the building.
Tied to reasonable design standards.
Why is 65% more reasonable than 70%?
70% would be fine. It's a 7% reduction.
But it's not even measurable. You wouldn't drive by and say, oh, you know what? That's got 65 and that's got 70.
Well, I don't
I
agree.
mean, you know, that's
My
just my
concern,
perception.
my
I mean,
concern, Ken, for every one of these decisions that you're making is that you can tie it to something that says, this was a legitimate, specific concern tied to a local concern that required the board to go in this direction. Rather than simply, we're doing this because this is a waiver of what we normally allow, and we don't think they should be able to do that. Because the latter is going to lead to a determination that there was simply a reduction for the sake of a reduction, and therefore is a denial masquerading as an approval.
I think if we had information before us, Ken, as
There were
to
existing
stormwater issues.
stormwater issues
But there
have been
was-
raised.
but we had our site
Yeah.
civil engineer look at it and say that there were no concerns. I think
It
that if there
complies
were
with DEP
there were-
stormwater management policy.
legitimate, if they didn't comply, or if there was still findings.
Then you would say they have to reduce impervious.
Right. I think based on the information before us, there's no basis. I agree with you, I would like to see this whole project reduced in size and scale, but I think we need to do our best to craft this.
So a local
And
concern
understand that what you're
is-
doing is reducing it in size
Any
and scale.
dimensional requirement could be phrased as a local concern,
Right.
but that's not what's going to withstand scrutiny if they appealed us. Planning, significant planning objectives, things like that that we've been focused on, I think, would withstand.
And the constructability,
Hopefully.
the impact of having a significant height waiver and a setback waiver when there's a building right there, which is why the buildings 1 and 2 setback waivers are not being approved. We haven't even gotten to the height issue yet, and I know we're gonna have a nice conversation about that.
Should we move along?
Move along.
And we'll come back to this,
No, I think
No.
or we're all set?
it's almost like you gotta pick your battles and have findings
Yes.
that's.
I feel strongly about that 5-foot
So
setback.
for the lot coverage by
For
structures,
one little building.
I know.
for the lot coverage by structures, I have the board grants this waiver request, subject to the waiver decision above denying the setback waivers for buildings 1 and 2.
That's lot coverage by
And other
structures.
conditions that may
Lot coverage.
apply, right? Paul,
Well, what
can we
other,
sneak that in there, and other conditions that may
yep,
apply?
and other applicable conditions.
Thank you.
And then for,
Lot coverage by structures and parking.
the board grants this waiver request, subject to the waiver decision above denying setback waivers for buildings 1 and 2, and subject to the condition requiring permeable pavement and parking lots,
Yes.
and other applicable
Thank you.
conditions.
Oh, we get right into height now.
So the only buildings that require
A height.
the height
1 and
waiver
2,
is 1 and 2,
right,
and I think
they're both in BR.
Applicant proposes a maximum height of 4 stories and 54 feet 1 inch. In a zoning district where the maximum height allowed is 2.5 stories and 35 feet.
So I could see granting them 3 stories.
I don't think that gets you anywhere. Then they're going to fight over the determination as to whether it is a 3 or 4 story building. And you could actually say, okay, we'll let you do the 3 stories, and then they win over the determination, and you've granted them the waiver alone.
And you've already made a finding on the redevelopment, if you will, of the building
Redesign.
design based on what your consultant said, which will clear some of that massing. So you won't have the mass, because I know that's the issue. And then the shadow study, that's what that's based on as well, the streetscape. Right?
So, on this one, Paul,
Yep.
we can't denial like we did for the setback where we said
That's an approach.
Is it a good approach? In your
You're
opinion?
reducing the number of units
Yes.
significantly.
And then we're still requiring redesign.
If
I
you-
mean, are those compatible?
Well, the flip side to that, of course, is if you're denying the waiver for the side setback based upon the impact of the massing that close, then why are you allowing the height waiver without that shadow study? I mean, it's almost, hand in hand. As much as I hate to say it, because that, the reduction in the number of units is getting me to the point where I'm not feeling super comfortable. But, I think that you at least have a basis for stating it, although it may just be that that basis turns into a remand back to this board for them to actually do the shadow study.
But then we still have.
And then you'll have to make a
over.
decision at that point.
Yeah, I mean, because I can see where you said, you know, what's the difference between if they're allowing 5, maybe 7 feet would be okay on a side yard setback if we had the shadow study, but without the information.
Right.
Because I can see going above 35 feet to accommodate the affordable housing
And one
the
ties to the
objective.
other. It may be that a 10-foot setback allows a higher
We
height,
don't know
but
that.
you don't have the shadow study to tell you what the impacts will be.
So you're gonna deny it on the basis that there's no shadows?
Well, we deny the waiver request.
Yes.
Based upon based upon a lack of information that you had the right to request.
And that he wouldn't submit.
Right.
With the
But
10-foot
not all it
setbacks
out.
on the side
All in all,
of the
denied.
buildings 1 and 2 adjacent properties, that's
Right,
there
what
for
we did with the
buildability, construction, and maintenance.
Correct. Well, and
Has
that,
nothing
and
to do with
the
the shadow
buildability goes to the height as well.
Yeah.
Right. Because
If you have to
The higher
get up
the
to
building is,
50
the more
feet
room
to
you need.
maintain the building, or
Yeah,
45
You
feet.
need 10 feet,
Right.
that's why it's 10 feet in the zoning laws.
I mean,
But
there's
even
so-
if it's 30
There's so
feet.
much with the buildability that we don't know yet, because we haven't got the final building plans. Remember, they could eliminate parking because the columns that I'm fairly certain they're going to need in the garage to
Oh, sure.
withstand a 3-foot
That probably goes
story.
a half a dozen.
which
Structure
also
on top.
goes then to the parking issue,
Right,
which goes to
So-
the lot coverage.
on and on.
Okay, so you think that's a good approach? I'm not, I know,
I think
you're
it's
a
an
lawyer,
approach.
I know, it's an approach.
I don't make any promises.
Is it,
Again,
I wouldn't expect you to.
To, you know, to the extent that, you know, the board is imposing conditions, right?
Mm-hmm,
And to the extent that the applicant comes into the Housing Appeals Committee and says, the totality of the conditions they have imposed upon us requires us to reduce the number of units in the project from 104 to, 90. I'm a lot more comfortable with that than them coming in and saying that the totality of the conditions require us to reduce from 104 to, 64.
do you think we're?
And I have no
I
way,
mean-
I'm just
I mean,
pulling those
that's-
numbers out
yeah.
of thin air.
But if we're saying no height waiver and we're going 54 feet to 35 feet, are we
Oh, yeah.
at that point where we're reducing it that significantly?
And
So
that's,
let's just say,
that's my
let's just say
concern.
they did reduce, ended up with 64. Now, what's, the economics are the criteria, are they not?
They don't have
Can
to
they
get
make
there
it
by
work
now.
at 64?
So, the question is, does it render the project uneconomic? We don't have any information as to what a 64-unit project would be. I'm sure that they will come back and say, absolutely, it renders the project uneconomic. The cursory review of the pro forma that I have done, I was really looking at with regard to the seasonality of the rentals issue, and the fact that their numbers for their rental income are much higher than you would think they would be, and presumably that's because they are presuming seasonal rental of these units. So the condition that this board wants to impose that denies the seasonal rental of the units is going to have a significant impact, presumably, on the economics of the project.
But the cost, I mean, if I look, I glanced at it, and my sense was the cost was pretty low compared to other projects I've seen.
The hard
So-
cost or the soft, what cost?
Yeah, the hard cost,
Construction cost.
purchase cost, construction cost.
Construction costs in the letter, in the package is ridiculous.
Construction business, I don't know, I'm not qualified to make that
Well, we're,
analysis.
we can't
I've
even
seen
say
other pro
until they
formas,
say
I've
it.
seen other,
We're gonna be very careful not to say that.
Right.
All right,
But and these are separate issues as well, in terms of, I'm presuming that this decision.
I just feel that there's some latitude.
I'm presuming this decision is going, you can't look at it as latitude within the pro forma. The regulations specifically say you are not allowed to review the project to see if you can reduce it to a lower number of units
Fair
unless you
enough.
have issues of
Based
local
on their
concern that it's
financial-
time.
But we are clearly concerned about it being overturned.
What my
That's-
concern is not, my presumption all along, since we began drafting this decision, given the way that the hearing process played out, is that there is going to be an appeal, and that there is going to be a claim that the decision renders the project uneconomic.
I'm sure that's true.
And I don't care about them making that claim, because we want all of the conditions and waiver decisions to be tied to issues of local concern that can sustain, even if there is a claim that it renders the project
But-
uneconomic. What my concern is.
One of the clear local concerns was the scale of this project relative to the rest of the
And that's been
buildings in the area.
being addressed throughout within the
But it's
conditions.
not just a matter of the setbacks. You know, there's more to it than that. There is the height, as you point out.
Which is what we're addressing now.
Uh,
And there is the streetscape, and that is, we're suggesting specific design changes. And we'll need to get back to that issue as well. If we're denying the height waivers, what does that do to the
So,
design changes?
so
But-
if we
but Ken,
recommend.
all along, my focus here
If
is
we-
that the board does not want to stumble into a decision that is deemed to have been a denial
So
rather
let
than
me-
an approval.
With
I
no
mean,
remand.
I had, for example, a specific suggestion on the sidewalk and appropriate landscaping around the sidewalk in front of, on Lot B. That would eat up some of that pavement, without without,
Well, what is that pavement doing?
well, it's right now,
Are
it's.
there turning radiuses involved?
No,
Radii?
there's
Are
no
they
turning
losing parking
radiuses,
spaces?
they're parking spaces.
If you're causing them to lose parking spaces, we've got a provision in the decision that states that any reduction in the number that are shown on the plans is a substantial change, and they need to come back for another approval. You can't then also include a condition that requires them to reduce the number of spaces. That would be arbitrary and capricious.
Okay, right now we're on height though. Can we, I think it's important to keep moving. So height. Let's just go down the line. Ed, what do you think about height?
I think it's way too high. It just doesn't fit in with the neighborhood. And it doesn't fit in with anything else in town.
Can you agree, obviously? I would have been inclined to grant it subject to the waiver, or subject to the redesign that Glenn Fontecchio gave us. But I could, I guess, fall in line with what Ken and Ed are saying if you think it could possibly be tied as we discussed.
Right,
That-
so-
that there
so we
is
can
some
craft-
nexus between
You can
side yard
craft
and.
this waiver to deny it based upon the lack of the shadow study, but then note, that if the board had sufficient information, that a different, a suggestion was made by the board's design consultant for a different design of those buildings to lessen the impact, certainly as from Main Street at least.
But here's a concern too. So if we say no height waiver, we want it 35 feet, we don't have the Glenn Fontecchio redesign information in, possibly.
Well, that's why I think we want to craft it to.
They build a square box. I mean, so that's not really an attractive
Right.
alternative.
Well, that's what they're proposing.
And then, well, that's what they're proposing right now. So do you want Glenn Fontecchio's with the height and the more compatible design, or do you want a 35
Remember, the height
foot
on the
box?
streetscape would not be 50 feet.
Right.
Based on Lynn Fontecchio's design. It's designed to cut back that third floor in
But
the
it would
front
be 50
of both
feet.
buildings and in the rear, so it doesn't affect adjacent
You've got a
properties.
22-foot wide roadway, and you're gonna have a 50-foot building looming up above.
This
Like
is a
downtown
40
New
feet.
York.
It's a 40 feet.
I
How high is
understand.
Puritan?
Huh?
How high is Puritan?
I don't know, the tallest building is the Admiralty Apartments on Scranton, I believe.
Yeah, yes.
We checked into that.
I think these other buildings in town all conform to that.
I don't think 704 Main Street does, I think they're at 40 feet, I'm not quite sure. I was
No,
gonna go
could
back and
I
check
could see
that, but-
something at comparable to that,
And that too is business redevelopment.
right?
TJ.
But if you guys do that, I mean, that throws out the whole finding and the purpose of the building redesign. and the
Well,
architectural
look,
consultant.
But
And
presumably,
it's
if
going
we
to
say
appear
it's denied
capricious.
because there's no shadow study, will they come back with a shadow study?
No, they
they'll
knew,
fight
I
that.
think that they
They'll
knew
fight that in the housing
whole, we
appeals.
gave them how many opportunities to provide a shadow study?
I
They
mean,
elected not to do so.
Thinking about this more, I think, Glenn's suggested revision addressed the impacts from the height.
Coupled with that side yard setback that we denied on that side. That's what
So
I would be comfortable with.
With that information in the record, I think that a simple denial of the height waiver, would probably seem to be arbitrary and capricious, because the board has been through its own consultant,
We did
given a
that, yeah.
proposed design that will address the concerns that the board was raising. So I think it's prudent for the board to follow the advice of its consultant.
And what you
So
had
do I.
discussed in the hearings, because that is what you
Mhm.
discussed.
Yeah, Glenn took a lot
Was
of time
cutting
with
that
it.
back. And you asked him specifically
And
why
I
he
think-
wouldn't do that, and he simply said, we don't want to. So all of that, you gotta remember, is a matter of record
And I
as
think,
well. Even though Housing Appeals is gonna look at this de novo, it may get to the point where we can submit all the other stuff, correct, Paul?
Correct. You're going to absolutely submit that.
Right,
as part
when
of
it's
it.
appropriate, yes,
okay, so Paul,
if we get a remand.
Murphy, you say Glenn Vecchio.
Yeah, definitely.
Side.
Yeah.
TJ,
Absolutely.
Same, because without it, we're stuck at 35,
I turn to you, then on this side. Ken, I know how you're feeling.
What about
it's-
denying the lot coverage, total lot coverage by structures?
It's-
I don't think we can go back to that one, we moved on.
That one is
Wow.
definitely arbitrary. It really is. It's a personal opinion. You're not looking at the site itself and what they're trying to
I'm looking
develop.
at the site, it's solid pavement.
But it's there for a purpose. This is a 104 unit housing development. They've got to maintain it. That's why there's so much hardscape there. I'm not trying to be a bully or anything, but from my experience, that's a very arbitrary and capricious issue, and it's not going to fly. And
I'm not gonna do
like
that.
we said, it's 80% in another business district and 90% in another one, so this is below the average.
So, pick your poison, but
Pick your fight. That's, you ain't gonna win with
either
more
the height
coverage.
or the lot coverage. So if you guys want to go with the lot coverage, I just don't.
I don't think, I can't get off,
Um,
we need to craft a decision.
Jill Newbauer came in with some really
The
nice
scale.
scaled
Yes.
images that showed how out of place this is.
The height,
Yes,
not the lot coverage.
the height.
Yes.
But understand that out of place is not a basis for denying
It's a local
or
condition.
imposing conditions on a 40B application.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise,
Working to
every single
improve
one
the
would be
project.
denied.
That's the goal, is to improve the
Every single one
project.
would be denied.
Right, well, I think that would be an improvement. Get rid of the height.
I'm for keeping the lot coverage as proposed and going with Glenn Fontecchio on his renderings for the height of the buildings, his revised. The drawings were done by him.
TJ?
I just think-
Oh, sorry, Paul.
No, that's all right. I mean, again, I get this funny feeling, and kind of, I think Paul does too. I mean, a little bit, I don't want to speak for him, but he's advocating pretty strongly about, being as reasonable as possible, and I just think that the residents are going to end up with Plan A if we're not careful.
I just don't want to be too careful.
I understand.
And that's a fair point as well.
Just by making them
So how about
pulled in
this?
on the sides, it's gonna have more, less lot coverage.
The board votes to grant the waiver request, but only to the extent consistent with the suggested changes in the review letter from Glenn Fontecchio requiring stepping back of the proposed buildings 1 and 2. The board does not grant a waiver for the building as proposed by the applicant.
That works, that leaves a lot of room, it really
Yeah,
does,
it does.
for the board. On final plans, it does. Don't you think?
But what does that do for height?
The middle of the building's still gonna be 50 feet.
Push it back out the street.
Can you make another finding outside of the lack of
I
a
think
shadow
Paul
study to
mentioned
deny
the
it?
lack of the shadow study, the fact that it's.
And,
But the lack of the shadow study is also supporting the proposal from Glenn,
Yes, I agree, but
His
I just
proposal
didn't think he
is-
went far enough.
in part to address the lack of information that the board had.
I think based on the information in front of us, our architect said
How many-
this is a way to address this
How many units
concern.
are on each floor of the buildings?
I don't, it just
We
varies
don't-
because some are 3, some are 2, some are 1, so I'd have to go back, it is in the file there. Do you want
The
to?
main binder here, sir?
Yeah, it's here, I can probably find it.
I presume we're
quicker.
losing 2 stories if we're going from
No, that's why I said, I think we
54 to
could
35.
say we would put we will allow 3 stories.
But I think that becomes
number of stories
arbitrary,
is
we're not
irrelevant.
experts.
I mean, honestly, the number of stories is semantics, it's the height.
Yeah.
Some people will count the garage and some won't.
I mean, they're already arguing that the current design was 3 stories, because they don't want to count the parking.
So,
That's
Well, in the
one more.
decision here, it's written as 4.
No, we're finding that it's 4 stories. That doesn't mean that the Housing Appeals Committee won't say, no, it's 3 stories. In which case, if we're just focusing on stories,
Definitely a
that's all they need to
four-story
do to
structure.
build what they want to build.
Building one, it looks like, well, building one typical floor plan has 19 stories per, 19 units, excuse me.
That's on the first floor plan for,
It says
oh,
typical.
that's a typical, yeah.
Building two, typical floor plan, levels 1 and 2 has what one? 13 and 14. So you eliminate,
65 units.
no, so it say 13 or 14. Building 2, level 3.
14 and 19 is what you're looking
Yeah.
at.
Are we losing 1 story or
That's
2 stories?
33.
What are we losing?
That might actually be right. You might be more than cutting the project in half.
Now, my question to you is, the 35-foot may be more than the top floor, if you deny that waiver, because you gotta remember, they got the parking structure. This isn't
Yeah.
a 2.5 story, at that point, then it's a 3 story. And my guess is, because of the height of that garage and the construction that you're gonna need between that to withstand the stories above it, you're still gonna be probably at 38, 39 feet. That's
So
my
I asked
opinion.
why they couldn't
Uh,
lower the
Building commissioner? there?
garage.
Well, what was that?
I asked why they couldn't lower
I
the
zoned
garage,
out.
why they couldn't
It's understandable.
excavate out some of that space and put the garage down 5 feet.
What's the elevation? What's the ground elevation? How far can they go down? Did we look at that? Did we talk to them about that?
I asked that question.
Then you've
So
gotta
I'm
make
saying-
room for,
If you take off that
Ramping?
top floor,
Mhm.
that building is still gonna be approximately 40 feet in height.
Yeah. Approximately.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
But I mean, removing floors and everything else, I mean, that's a pretty radical request, is it not?
No, they just were guessing removal of the apartments, but I suggested that if they're denying the height waiver and they remove that top floor, that building is still gonna be 40 feet approximately. So you can't, you can do whatever you want. You can totally deny it. I'm just saying that that's not gonna get you taken off that third floor is
I'm not denying that.
Not gonna get rid of a height waiver.
I mean,
I understand that. I'm okay with some waiver, personally, with some waiver for height. I just don't feel that going up to 50 feet is too much.
Becomes arbitrary, Ken.
I don't think it's arbitrary. I saw
The housing
diagrams that
ordinance-
made it very clear that it was out of scale.
So, here's the thing. Reducing the number of units by taking off a floor is indisputably going to leave this as an uneconomic project once the HAC takes a look at it. It's unquestionable, okay? Even if they do not
If they had,
look, even if they don't look at that and say that this was arbitrary and capricious and that this is a denial masquerading as an approval, having found that to be a condition impacting the economic viability of the project, what is the Housing Appeals Committee going to do? They're gonna look at that and they're going to say, is there an issue of local concern that requires the reduction in the height? And out of character with the neighborhood is not a basis for it. So your likelihood of sustaining that reduction at HAC is small, right? Without pointing to something that was very strong, saying that there is a need to reduce that height. And yet there is also a not inconsequential chance that that sort of a condition leads to a determination that this was really a denial, not an approval. So it's really a cost-benefit analysis with regard to that question.
So where are we right now?
So Paul, you say, obviously, you're okay with the Glen Fontecchio, you're okay with the lot coverage.
Definitely.
TJ, did you say the same?
Same.
I said the same. I know what you're saying, Ken. This isn't a project that we're fond of. It's trying to figure out how to make it fit best and have it upheld. And so I do agree. I don't think that we can, I think we require them to comply with Glen Fontecchio's plan. I think that that's,
but there is a solution, which is they can lower the parking.
If they lower it below grade, you're not gonna get the same quantity of vehicles in there. And you're
So you
gonna
have
need more parking
ramping.
outside.
now you're increasing, I would assume, increasing
columns.
costs with
You're gonna
having
have
to.
ramps to get down to the level that gobbles up the.
Yeah, I'm not talking about it, 10 feet down.
Even if you go 5
Talking
feet.
about redesigning the entire project.
I think you could lower it by 4 or 5 feet and it would have a substantial beneficial impact on the scale of the building.
That is a different question, right? I mean, if you're not talking about an immediate reduction in units, I don't know what the impact on construction costs would be if you had to sink that into the ground.
Higher.
Significantly higher or just somewhat higher, I don't know. It's certainly a different calculus. If the review simply doesn't state, you imposed a condition that requires them to chop off, a floor of the building, rather than you imposed a condition that says we want you to lower the garage level, by 5 feet, so that we can have a corresponding improvement in, the height of the building. That, I'm not sure it's upheld, if that specific condition is reviewed on the basis of it rendering the project uneconomic, but it appears less arbitrary and capricious.
Then we're getting away from, if we lower the garage halfway, now
I don't think that impacts
can we redesign it?
Yes, I
to
don't think
have
that
the-
impacts a 5 foot, I mean, if you say it's 5 feet, I don't know, constructability, I don't know if that even
We
makes
don't even know
sense.
that, and that
Yeah.
was not something that was brought up. That was not something that
No,
was
I-
It was-
discussed by
it was
the
brought
board.
up.
It was brought up.
But I don't think it was responded
It
It was
to.
not
Yeah.
addressed by the applicant.
So then,
And it
do
wasn't asked
we,
again.
do we include a
It-
condition?
How many times do you have to ask it, Suri? I've raised it.
How many times did you ask for a shadow study?
So do we include a condition that requires them to provide plans, showing sinking the parking area 5 feet?
then that first, so how tall is the parking garage?
It has to be a minimum of
10
12 feet.
So let's
Does it
say-
not?
Okay, well, let's say, so we dip it down 5. Now we have a 7-foot.
Mhm.
Now
So-
you're 45 feet instead
Right.
of.
No,
instead of
I
50.
understand the benefit there, but
what
what's
does
the
it do
benefit,
to the
what's the
streetscape
change to the
impact?
streetscape?
Right,
Now we're,
yeah.
I mean,
You're talking-
that's
it's
the
54
primary
feet
local
in
concern
height.
here.
So you're going down to 49 feet. Does that mean it's arbitrary as well, just like your little lot coverage and your setbacks? And I'm not trying to be picky, I'm just saying,
I don't think asking them to lower the level of the parking garage so that you can get a corresponding reduction in height is arbitrary, but I do think
I
that
do.
it's,
but I'm not sure.
well, why would it be arbitrary? If you're looking for
It's not
a way to
arbitrary.
reduce
They're-
that height impact, and this is a way that actually
Yes.
addresses that in a manner that hopefully wouldn't be overly onerous to the applicant.
Because at that point, I really think you're getting into, that is gonna be substantially more expensive.
And that's the question.
I mean, that's going to be, I mean,
You're talking about,
you're
But-
talking more than pre-stress, you're
That- but
talking a
that-
lot of,
That concerns me less than the issue of, it really conflicts with a number of the other stated goals of the board in this decision
How does it do that?
with regard to the impact on the streetscape.
our consultant didn't come up, have any
again,
input
it's
on-
it's an unknown, we don't even know what that elevation is.
See how it
You're
affects the
changing
streetscape. It's under the building.
The gradings, you're changing the drainage issues, you're
You're changing
changing possibly
everything.
lot coverage,
Well, you
I
shouldn't be
mean,
changing the drainage.
you're-
It's still the
but
same
you're-
impervious coverage.
but you're going down,
It's
so
gonna
now
definitely
are
impact
things
drainage.
Oh, I mean, you're
draining
getting into the-
differently?
Better believe, we don't know what the
Get
water
into the
table
water
is
table,
there.
right.
We don't know. Now you have on ground level, like you can see
I mean, I think
somewhere
it's
in
a,
open
I think it's
space,
an
now do you have to
interesting,
put up fencing, do you?
it's an interesting question, but it probably raises more problems that you just don't have answers for.
I get what you're saying, Jen. I don't know how, I don't think that we can redesign the project.
Well, in that case, then I think we should deny the height waivers. If Fontecchio is making him step back anyway, you're losing some units, so you're not
Right.
losing 33 units. You're losing some number less than that. Maybe it's 15 units due to that. Who knows? But that building is in scale with the
But-
surrounding building.
Again, the difference is you have a study from your design consultant that says that this is a reasonable approach to addressing the board's massing concerns.
I understand,
And that
but
in
there
Denying
was,
the height waiver,
Does
and
the-
throwing that out.
does the
and
comment of
Ignore it.
the abutters in public matter at all?
They certainly matter,
Okay, well,
But-
I heard them saying that they
But that's
felt
not-
this building was out of scale.
but out of scale, there's literally not a single Housing Appeals Committee decision ever that upholds a condition or a denial based upon a project being out of scale. Every project that's ever been proposed pursuant to Chapter 40B is at a scale greater than what is allowed.
Absolutely, and this one is, and it will be.
Everyone is.
And this one will be even without a 50-foot height.
Understood, but that is not something that will be upheld if this is appealed, and we're very
Ken, if you
confident
go
that
with
it
the
will be.
Fontecchio design and they pull that back, they are gonna eliminate some apartments.
I understand.
And it is, then at that point, you could eliminate that parking out in front and reduce your lot coverage. That's not working either, huh? I mean, it
I don't
is a
want to see a
balancing
50-foot
act.
high building,
It is a balancing act, and
I don't
five-story
either, but I
building,
go along with
a
the
5-story building.
compromise.
force,
No one, I don't think anyone here wants to see a 5-story building or a 54-foot building.
No, that's 5 stories.
it's that way because of the garage array.
But what you have to balance that against is issuing a decision that makes it much more likely that you're gonna see the building as proposed by the applicant.
I'm willing to take a little bit of a chance. It's a balancing act, I agree.
You've got to be willing to take that total chance as well.
Oh,
I mean,
understand.
that's,
I'm just giving you my position.
that's a huge thing for the board to discuss.
I don't think we can go down to 35 feet. I don't think that gets a problem. And I think anywhere in between is arbitrary. We don't have to all be unanimous, we don't have to.
We don't.
So does the board want to vote on this one waiver and note what the vote was, or just leave it as
It'd be a
is?
fine approach if you want to do that.
And I can simply state this relief was granted 4-1, or 3-2.
Yeah.
4-1.
But then would you vote on the rest of the decision?
Yeah, I'll go with the rest of the decision.
Okay.
Well, we can. All right, so that was height. Lot area in an RC zone. Applicant proposes a lot area of 28,274 square feet in a zoning district requiring a minimum lot area of 40,000 square feet.
So this has to do with the creation of the new lot,
Right.
and don't see any basis for not granting this.
I agree with you. That is, I think, consistent with the goals of 40B. I agree with that.
I think everybody agrees, right?
Yes.
Lot width in a BR and RC zone, applicant proposes a lot width of 89 feet 4 inches, where 100 feet is required in the RC zoning district, where 125 feet is required in BR zoning district. I think that's fine as well.
Yes, the only question I would have is, was this actually measured correctly? I'm not sure where the lot width measurement is being done here, but I just want to make sure, as we pointed out previously, that they're measuring from,
Well,
The
this
lot
is
line.
definitely
Property
going,
line,
this is
not
definitely
the
going east
pavement.
and west.
so it's not going to the Lantern Lane side.
It is, it's going Lantern Lane
So I want to make sure
east
they're
and
measuring
west.
from the property line and not from the edge of Lantern Lane.
Well, I think that needs to be clarified, and that will
Right.
show on,
So I'm going to ask Brian to
we'll look at that, okay. Verify that. And that's one thing that's gonna have to show in the final plans as well.
Again, they have,
Okay. So,
Right, we're going to repeat.
yes,
a lot
some of
what
that.
we just
So
went
that
through.
was lot
Hopefully we can do it
A.
a little more quickly.
Yes. So lot B now, multifamily use, applicant requests a waiver allowing the construction of 57 multifamily units in a zoning district that allows a maximum of 8 units per acre. That one we did, right? So a lot of these are
Granted,
copy
subject to the
paste.
conditions contained in the board's decision, requiring revisions to reduce massing.
And that extra, where
Yep, same thing with multifamily use in an RC zoning district. I mean, I think we talked about a lot of these, we were talking about them all at once.
Yeah, these are pretty repetitive.
Front
It's
yard
just
setbacks,
different lots.
yeah, so we can plug these in later.
Yeah,
Side,
based.
rear, lot coverage by structures, height, again. So maybe we just skip down to additional waivers for both lot A and B. Parking, applicant seeks a waiver allowing a minimum of 154 parking spaces in a zoning district. That's interesting that they use the term minimum. And I guess in a zoning district requiring a minimum of 166 parking spaces.
So essentially, they could,
Put more.
but they really can't because we're giving them their maximum
Lot coverage
lot-
and issues, yeah.
building and parking, so.
Is everybody okay with that waiver, 154 versus 166?
Yep, yes.
That reminds me of a condition, Paul, if I could
Yep.
just say it, right now I've written it down. Can we require parking, can we either contain a finding or a condition or both, parking for residents and guests only, that they're not
So they're
to,
not allowed to have a commercial parking lot, or?
or occupants. Yeah, so they're not allowed to have a commercial or for sale, or not for sale, for, yeah, that's the concern.
Okay.
Should be in the
Although if you're
management-
having,
That should be in the management documents as well.
you're having commercial use in the front,
Well, occupants could, but I'm
Well,
saying
but then
no.
if you got a commercial use, can the patrons of that commercial
Right.
space use the parking?
Yeah, so occupants
They're not
and
an
their,
occupant.
well, okay, and their guests, however you wanna say, lessees, you wanna say lessees and their guests?
or what about the people that work in the commercial space?
Okay, well, we can think of the terminology,
Maybe
I want,
associated
just, I
with
mean,
the
maybe
site.
Right.
instead of saying who can use it, maybe we say what can't be done, which is.
Is there a concern that there would be a reason for,
I mean, there are parking spaces, it's parking lots in town that rent out for people who use the boat, who walk to the boats, things like that.
Some of them are really.
Are they
So
close
you
enough
wanna
to-
say no overnight parking except by,
Well, I want no day parking for a fee too. I'm not saying they would do that.
no
but I
parking
just
for a
want-
fee?
well, that-
Well, I think the issue,
That's the concern.
the issue is you're granting a waiver of the required parking spaces. And the presumption is that that's how many the project needs. Therefore, you don't want to be giving away those spaces to other uses.
Anything, if they
Unrelated
did
to the
anything
project.
for a fee, it's in violation. And that's a zoning enforcement issue.
So something to that effect, I thought might be.
You could just put it for the tenants and guests, because tenants could be, you know, people working there as well. They're employees,
I
they're
thought,
tenants
yeah.
of the site.
Okay?
Landscaping requirements. Applicant seeks a waiver of landscaping requirements to allow landscaping as proposed on plans.
Denied.
Deny.
No. No.
Well, I don't want it like this. I am not agreeing to the landscaping that they
As
propose on the
condition.
plan.
So, yeah, but subject to the
Subject
conditions
to the
required.
Conditions in,
Correct.
yes,
So,
exactly.
so, yeah, we're not making them comply with
Right,
whatever
exactly.
landscaping, you're gonna make them comply with whatever landscaping requirements you're imposing on them specific to this particular project.
Exactly, yes. The applicant seeks a waiver of the flow neutral bylaw under chapter 180 sewers and septic systems, article 8, section 180-51 through 180-61, to allow for 165 bedrooms and 95,902 square feet of land where one bedroom per 10,000 square feet of lot area is permitted by right. Whew. Big waiver.
Hence the reason for not having a fourth floor.
Yeah. Yeah,
And the board does not have,
Standard waiver.
the board doesn't have any
right.
information
understood.
submitted to it that says that, you know, there's a lack of
Well, and we have
capacity
the,
or anything of that nature, so.
we have information saying there is capacity.
Yes.
The applicant also requested that the board grant a blanket waiver saying that to the extent that the plan shows additional waivers at specific locations
No.
and expressly set forth above, these waivers are also granted.
Nope.
No.
And that shouldn't have even been there, that's one thing that we don't allow. You have to be specific.
Okay.
Sorry, Paul, is that right?
I will say that I would not grant that waiver in this instance. I would-
Okay.
In certain circumstances of agreed upon waivers that were phrased significantly differently than that, but in this instance, you're not close, you know, to a point where you could agree to that sort of a condition.
So I think we need one more go around.
Well, with the conditions, we've dealt with the waivers, but we haven't dealt with
Well, you basically
We-
just set your conditions through the waivers and through the
All right, there's
findings.
just one condition that I specifically added here with respect to, and I put it, let's see, mine or yours, or where is this? But it has to do with the sidewalk in front of building,
Go figure.
Building 1. Or is building 1 or building?
building 1. Right, which originally on the
Which is in
plan,
the
no
road layout.
sidewalk was shown. Now I see there is some, I believe there's a sidewalk shown, I can't really tell.
You're looking at F8,
Maybe.
the 4-foot sidewalk shall be constructed along the easterly side of Lantern Lane.
Yeah,
Could be in the road
okay.
In
layout.
front of the parking area serving building 1, such sidewalk shall be protected from traffic along the street and in the parking area by a 5-foot wide landscaping buffer on either side of the sidewalk.
Yes,
A
does it say that?
5-foot wide?
This
Says
was
7 foot.
Ken's
That's
suggestion.
my suggestion.
It's a 7-foot sidewalk, Ken.
That's a 4, typically a 4-foot.
Yeah, but this is shown as a 7-foot. So then you're reducing it.
No, I think
And is
that's
it
the
in the
entire
roadway?
island
Is it
that's
in the
Well, this
7.
says a
Yeah.
4-foot wide
Then
sidewalk.
why would you
so-
even want to condition a sidewalk in the road layout? When you've already asked specifically for
Unless-
setbacks.
I'm not saying where it should be in the road layout, I'm saying there should be a sidewalk.
We've also asked for less impervious.
There was no on the original plan, if you wanted to get to Main Street, you had to walk, on the sidewalk, you had to walk in, across the building, and then out again. I think there should be a sidewalk. I think it should be a landscaped island, rather than,
If they don't have an, unless you put it in the road layout.
well,
Does that interfere with accessibility too? How much width do you need to make it, to keep it accessible?
what do you mean accept?
Like handicap accessible?
Well, they
so-
can't put
It would definitely
landscaping
be
within the
road
layout. Because then that would be a blocking of an easement area.
Well, I mean, so then we've got major issues, I guess, still, because then they have some of their proposed landscaping in the road
Yes.
layout. They have some of their sidewalk in the road layout.
Well,
They're
don't-
measuring the setbacks, obviously,
Don't-
from the road.
Doesn't the unpaved portion of most roadways include some grass or shrubbery
It's been
or something?
encroached upon, not knowing what the actual
Well,
layout is.
grass
Look at
is-
Mary
is
Vista
certainly
and
allowed.
Falmouth
What they
Heights,
can't
all
do
those
is-
areas.
Put in plantings that would actually prevent people from passing and repassing over that
Yeah.
area. Because
They grow.
people have a deeded right, an easement over that area.
They're proposed accessible ramps.
Again, ramps is not gonna
And
block
la-
anyone's access. Can't put anything that blocks access over that area.
Ken's not proposing,
What I'm trying to get
So
at.
sidewalks are okay.
The
It's not
creation
gonna block
of an
access.
island buffer for Lot B that allows pedestrian access along the street. Okay. That is sufficient so that it, again, it creates an area where people are comfortable walking.
So
there's not room.
if there's room, a 5-foot.
Well, again, there's not
grass-
room on this plan, but that plan is
Well,
gonna be
my concern
reconfigured.
is having the board approve placing obstacles within an easement area, and thereby infringing upon people's rights. That's a big fence.
I don't think there's any obstacle there.
Well, if you require them to put landscaping plantings within that area.
I'm
then
not
they-
proposing they put redwoods up there.
Well, it doesn't matter, if it's a 2-foot high bush, it's still blocking
Yeah.
the
Well,
use of the
then-
way. If it's grassed, it's not.
Yeah,
So
so
if you're looking for a grassed strip
could say,
alongside the sidewalk, I don't have a problem with that. That doesn't cause any concerns for me.
I would be happy with a grass strip, frankly. But I think that I think we need, some greenery around this island area. So, I mean, it maybe not continuous landscaping, you could have, I mean, there's, the other thing I thought is, I don't know if crosswalks are, painted marked crosswalks are mandated.
We talked about a crosswalk from the westerly building so that people can cross safely to the pool area.
Right, but
And the
al-
speed bumps, don't forget the 2 speed bumps.
but also, you know, there should be a painted
That's
crosswalk at least, you know, at the entrances of these parking areas. I mean, we're talking 700 vehicle trips a day.
I think a grass strip would be okay if,
They showed, they actually showed shrubs and stuff in that, but they didn't have any sidewalk.
right.
So I'm just saying, add a sidewalk and add some greenery on both, either side of the sidewalk, so the sidewalk is protected from the pavement.
They could almost, I mean, they're proposing now, or we're requesting sidewalks on both sides of Lantern Lane. You can almost do away with one and make one more significant with a greener buffer.
So you want the 5-foot,
You know, the trouble with that is, if you
Grass
come out of
strip along
one
between.
building, you have sidewalk, and if you come out of the other, you don't.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you're gonna have,
Okay, so I think,
I grew up in the Midwest where we had 10 feet of grass strip between the roadway and the sidewalk.
this certainly isn't the Midwest.
I'm just saying. It was actual, there was actual planning so people could walk safely along the roads.
All right, so we're going to need another hearing at which, or excuse me, a meeting. We're going to need it
Yeah.
to review a final, the decision with final, findings and conditions and waivers incorporated for us to review.
My problem is trying to get the board here because the 2 meeting dates that we came up with was this date and July 11th. And one of the voting members couldn't make July 11th.
Who
So
was that?
what do you suggest?
I'm also available the 10th.
I'm available the 10th,
What day is the 10th?
Monday.
Yeah, I would be.
I don't know if I can get this room. I got it for the 11th.
Well, we need to post 2 days in advance, right? Just open
Yes.
meeting. We can find a space.
That will accommodate the public.
The library if necessary.
Remember there's a phone speaker.
All right, I'll
So,
work on that. You want the 10th instead of,
Ken, are you available on the 10th?
I can say.
Ed?
I can make it,
TJ?
The 10th,
And-
yeah.
Monday, July 10th,
Yes.
Paul?
Yeah.
And Paul Haverty, not to put pressure on you, could we get it by the 7th, by the end, are you, I know that's a tough week next week.
I can do it tomorrow.
Oh,
With the-
okay.
With the changes we discussed tonight.
Yes, yeah,
I'm still gonna have, I think, probably some outstanding information for the stuff that I need to ask Brian to get me. But
okay. That way we have some time to sit down with that.
for the most part, I've already made all the changes that we talked about.
Great. All right, so to be continued, our discussion, and that will be the final because we have to,
Yeah.
Because you're out of time.
we're out of time.
All right, so
So,
that is at
July 10th.
6:30.
6:30, want to say here in Town Hall tentatively, but we just will post the meeting
Right,
notice.
it's an open meeting, so
It's
it's
an
not
open
a
meeting.
continuation of a hearing, so
So we
I'm
can
okay.
Right,
post
so
it 48 hours
All
in
of the
advance.
other changes on the conditions, I presume, are okay? Can I accept them and you can have a little bit less red
Yes.
in this decision?
Yes.
Yes.
And everything we talked about tonight, we'll take the tracking off.
Okay, so that's it. We don't need obviously a, lower. So 10th, 6:30, somewhere in town. And that's it.